So good morning and welcome everybody. We are very happy that you made on this sunny way your way here on this sunny day to Jolialom. On behalf of the Institute for the Development of Moldova, you see I don't try to pronounce it in Romanian, and of the project team, I warmly welcome you to this event. This event is for us, the experts, because we have this time asked and funded by the State Chancellery to do it. So no foreign money was involved in this exercise. The exercise meaning looking into particular questions which related to policies in the justice sector, in which we are all interested, obviously. This is why we are here. And for us it was really a new experience, not to work for a donor, for a foreign donor, but directly basically for an NGO here in the country, which won the tender with the State Chancellery. I briefly introduce the experts which I have with me here today. On my left side you see Marina Nomowska-Milewska. Marina has been here to the country, like to many other countries, especially in the Eastern Partnership for many years, working as a consultant on all matters related to the rule of law, and especially on matters like training of judges, training of other legal professionals, and ethical questions. And this is also the training and specialization of judges is something Marina took care of in our team for our project. Next to me on the left side we have Mr. Holger Hembach, a German lawyer specialized on human rights, with a vast experience also reforms of prosecutors, prosecution services. Mr. Hembach was the first high-level legal advisor of the EUD to the Prosecutor General here in Moldova a couple of years ago. And that is why, not surprisingly, Holger took care especially of the prosecutor service, but also he looked into the harmonization of judicial practices in this exercise. Last but not least, to my right, we have a colleague from the Netherlands, Mr. Jos Uyterhaag, Mr. Uytterhaag has been many years a private enforcement officer, executor in the Netherlands, owning a big company there, because there the privatization took place already many years ago. But in parallel, he worked also for decades, I can say, as a legal consultant all over the world, not only for the enforcement issues, but for all issues related to the rule of law and justice reform. And within our team and within our exercise, Mr. Uytterhaag looked into the situation of enforcement of civil judgments, and also in the implication which the justice reform have or doesn't have for the economic development. My name is Carsten Manke. I'm from Germany, but I'm living in Moldova. This is why I have been living here for more than 10 years. This is why, like every roundtable, I start with apologizing for not yet speaking Romanian language. Obviously, this is not my strongest point. I hope so, that I'm stronger when it comes to justice reforms and the rule of law. And I have worked here for GIZ, for the Council of Europe, in EU-funded projects. And now I'm having here my own consultant company, because I'm much more optimistic with regard to the potential of the country than some others. And I like to live here. Within this project, I promised to learn Romanian. Within the project, I have been responsible for looking into the court map, optimization of the court map, or I would say reorganization better, because if it is an optimization, we still have to see. And second, into the self-governance of judiciary. So two topics which are very close to what I have done so far. You know, when you have been involved, like myself, for many years in the justice reform in a particular country, then of course there is a little bit a conflict of interest if you evaluate the state of affairs after a while, because you don't want to see that you were totally failing for 10 or 15 years of your professional career. And I always try to take this or keep this in my mind when I was writing my conclusions. So I think there where I'm optimistic, it is objectively, I hope so, and there where I'm more pessimistic, I also hope that it gives a realistic and objective picture of the situation. We have decided that I start with my presentations today. And the first one would be not the one which is now here. The first one I would like to talk about is basically the optimization of the court map. Let me see if I can... So, when we look into the situation, how it is today, I have to read it in English in parallel, otherwise it becomes very difficult. But basically the situation is that when we look how it came to the optimization of the court map, how it became into, how it got into the judicial strategy from 2011 to 2016, my finding is that there was not a sufficient information or public debate about what this exercise could be. Do we really need it now, or is it steered by donor ideas or by, let's say, incentives from the outside? And this related to the fact that also before you started the implementation, there was no sufficient information or public debate. This we found out when we talked with judges, legal professionals. They had the feeling they had not been heard sufficiently before the decision was taken. But what was really striking, and why I was like looking into this exercise, is because this exercise shows very well that there is no sufficient capacity in the MOJ for the policy-making process. If you look how the optimization of the court map has been done, once it was decided that something should be done, the whole preparatory work on which the policy was based later had been outsourced to an NGO, the Legal Resource Center, which did a great study. I mean, this is no, and I want to mention this specifically. But if you see how impactful the reshaping of the organization is, you cut down from 45 courts to 15 courts. I think policymakers cannot outsource the whole preparatory work and basically base their policy on one study, even if it is a very good study. And when you get the study presented in the MOJ, the next problem is you don't have the capacity really and the expertise in-house, the MOJ, to challenge it or to say, is it really what we want? You hardly have the capacity sometimes to digest all the information which you get. So that means the policy-making process here in this case, with regard to the court map, had been outsourced to civil society. And again, this is not a criticism against civil society. But there is a vacuum sometimes because we invest a lot in building up capacity in civil societies, in civil society organizations, and the state institutions who are accountable for the policy at the end have no equality of arms, as Mr. Cebotari, when he was Minister of Justice, called it one time. And I think this is a problem. As I said, also in the planning of the process, the legal society, let's call it like this, has not been sufficiently involved. But also not the people who are dealing with vulnerable groups, people with disabilities, very poor people, for whom it might be a big difference if the next court is 5 kilometers away or 55 kilometers away. Especially if you take into account the infrastructure here in the country, if you want to call it like this. And I didn't see that regional civil society really had something to say during the process. So I think what we have to look critically at is the policy-making process, the decision-making process. Now, of course, we are where we are. I mean, we cannot really turn back the time, so to speak. But for the future, it should give us some things to think about. Yeah, I think I skipped this thing because I lost already totally orientation in this presentation. So what we did is we went to Ungen last time in an EU-funded project, for which we are very grateful, because Ungeni, you know, is the only court which has been merged already, where you have the people. Sorry? Yes, but I mean it was the first court. Sorry. You see, there is too much expertise in the civil society. I always say this. We went to Ungen, and our expert discussed with all the judges around, with all judges working there, in order to look what is really the effect of merging the courts. What do the judges say? Is their work now better, easier, less, or whatever? It turned out that, not to a big surprise, obviously, the judges who had to commute every day from Nisporen to Ungeni were not very happy to spend up to 3 hours on the road every day. That is too expected. I think the bad thing is here that nobody thought in time about compensate them for these additional efforts, show them some incentives, or even inform them really properly. The judges who always worked in Ungen, they didn't say that their life has become better or easier, their professional life, so to speak. But they reported that they have more postponements in cases because it is more happening that witnesses are not coming, parties are not coming, prosecutors are not coming, lawyers are not coming. And they said it's especially if people from Nisporen are involved. So if you look to this, we have to see that even if it might be worse in the long run, about what I'm not totally sure, but it might be, there is no hard evidence today that it will pay off. And the arguments were economic of scale, specialization, things like that. And there's a Council of Europe study I think from 2012, we have them in our paper, which says that it looks very logical that bigger courts are more efficient and that the quality of judgments is increasing. However, the only country which ever tried to bring proof to it, so in order to base its policies on evidence and not on intuition, but to have a fact-based policy, was Denmark. And they found out that there was no increase of efficiency by merging the courts. Again, here it has been done together with the specialization of judges. About my colleague Marina will talk, so we don't have to talk about this here at the moment. The conclusions which I made for me is that the success of major reforms depends on sufficient preparation, which needs room for extensive discussion among all stakeholders and participation from broad public, and with really an open outcome. If you have discussions, studies, where the outcome, at least the general outcome, is already clear, because you put the outcome before in the strategy and you said we want to somehow reshape it, then of course half of the exercise has been already cut. The second is my conclusion: the policy making process should not be outsourced to civil society or to donors. State institutions have to insist on striking a better balance in participation in policy making process. That has also to do with my understanding of democracy. We have people who professionally do policies in the country, they should do. And I think we have to enable them to do their job. And if we sometimes come with, and I'm part of it, I mean, I'm also an international expert. So what I'm criticizing here, or what I ask you to rethink with us together, is also my own profession, basically. But if we take over a civil society, for which I'm here today, or as a donor, for which I worked in many projects, the policy-making process, then we have different problems. First is, again, the democratic oversight, which is missing. Because for me, what I do as an international expert, there is basically no accountability. In the worst case, you drive to the airport and you fly home. There is accountability on the sides of parliament, of government, and they should be also put from us in the shoes to be able to take the decisions. And the third conclusion for me with regard to the court map is, especially if you have reforms which put additional burdens of many people, and this is true for most of the reforms, you have to run better information campaigns. And the information campaigns you have to do, in my opinion, have to target the citizens. This is the most important, because they are basically the ones for whom we are running the justice sector. You have to hear what they think about it. Not let them take the decision again, but they might have quite good ideas which we don't see here, especially if we are sitting in Chisinau. And the second thing is to have a better information campaign towards the legal professionals. Because for you as a judge, it is a difference if you have a 5-minute walk to your court, or if you have a 1.5-hour marshrutka ride to the court. And if the people feel that they have not been involved in all this exercise, and then the questions come, was it good to merge the court in Ungen with Nisboren, should it not have been Strachen, and so on. Again, the study from the Legal Resource Center looked in many of these questions, and it was an excellent document in order to start the discussion, but it was, in my opinion, not sufficient to replace a discussion. Now we have what we have. We are basically in the middle, or a little bit at the beginning of the merging of the courts. And we made some technical recommendations how to deal with it. I go only very, very briefly through it. The first, I think, is if not, I'm not sure if it happened, but as much I understand from the SCM, it didn't happen yet, to create a working group of court presidents and chief of staff of all courts in order to get regular updates. How is it going with the court optimization? What is really the impact? What is the felt impact, the subjective perceived impact, and what is the objective impact? Because we still can learn for the courts which have not been merged, maybe something. Also, in my opinion, it is a task of all of us in the civil society to foster a group of regional NGOs in the justice area in order to include really the regions which we are here reshaping from the justice point of view, and to get their input and their thoughts about what is going on in their neighborhood, basically. So I think that is very important, and especially to look also that we take care about the access to justice for the most vulnerable. I guess that all of you are aware of the World Bank report, which also was a little bit, I would not say critical, but at least skeptical about the access to justice. And then we have to go really heavily into analyzing, again, objectively, meaning by statistics, but also by user surveys, to look into what is happening into the courts which have been already merged. And last but not least, I mentioned already the lack of information. Under the Atreco project, we started something also together with media and the Legal Resource Center and other NGOs in the country to inform citizens, and we saw that there is a lack of information. We had up to, I think, 300 people in the room when we started a roadshow about informing about the changes. The only room where we were sitting in front of empty chairs was in Chisinau. Okay, okay. It was empty, really? Nobody told me. So that shows that we have places where we have an overkill of information, because we are all centered around Chisinau. But that shows also that other regions feel forgotten, and this we cannot afford, in my opinion, for different reasons. So that is the end of my presentation with regard to the court map. We would now have time to 5 minutes, I think, or 10 minutes, to discuss your thoughts on it, comments. So the floor is open.
Bună ziua, mă numesc ONG-ul, sunt consilier juridic la Centrul de Resurse Juridice. Mă bucur că denumirea organizației în care activez a fost menționată de mai multe ori decât Ministerul Justiției. Câteva comentarii care cred că sunt relevante de menționat, pentru că sunt sigur că mass media va transmite și publicului larg. Într-adevăr, optimizarea hărții judecătorești a fost adoptată relativ recent. Cel mai important lucru care nu trebuie să fie omis este faptul că Republica Moldova nu este la prima încercare de a optimiza harta sau de a reamplasa instanțele judecătorești. Acest lucru este deja la 3-a oară. Anterior, PNUD-ul, Banca Mondială și alți donatori au fost implicați în aceste procese. Centrul de Resurse Juridice a fost implicat activ și la elaborarea strategiei de reformă a sectorului justiției. Apropo, erau implicate și alte ONG-uri, nu doar noi. Am regretat foarte mult lipsa judecătorilor. De aceea și mulți dintre judecători, într-adevăr, nu privesc reformele din justiție ca fiind un produs sau un beneficiu al lor, pentru că nu au fost implicați. Deja ține de Ministerul Justiției și Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii să expună în ce măsură aceste instituții s-au asumat angajamentul ca profesiile juridice, vorbesc nu doar de judecători, dar procurori, avocați, executori judecătorești, să fie implicați în procesele decizionale în acest aspect. Într-adevăr, discuțiile publice asupra optimizării hărții judecătorești au fost doar după ce legea a fost adoptată, când s-a discutat doar despre efecte, dar trebuie să menționăm că Parlamentul a adoptat o hotărâre prin care a menționat că optimizarea hărții judecătorești va avea loc timp de 10 ani. Deci, este un proces de durată, etapizat, în care nu într-o zi se vor optimiza, se vor unifica sediile instanțelor, dar este vorba de mai mulți ani. Ceea ce politicul a omis să spună tot timpul este că optimizarea hărții judecătorești trebuia să aibă loc împreună cu alte reforme importante. Este vorba de reforma administrației publice locale și inclusiv asigurarea cu drumuri calitative. Ceea ce noi vedem că foarte multe din achizițiile publice pentru drumurile care urmau să unească mai multe sedii ale instanțelor judecătorești, nici până la moment nu au fost executate. De aceea și apar întrebările referitor la cât de bună este reforma, optimizarea instanțelor, atâta timp cât drumurile rămân a fi proaste, indiferent de programele guvernului în acest sens. Referitor la expertiza insuficientă, eu cred că a fost foarte bine că mai multe ONG-uri au contribuit la aceste reforme, iar decizia finală a fost luată de către guvern. Noi nu am adoptat legi, noi nu am emis decrete prin punerea în aplicare a legilor, de aceea și decizia politică a fost luată de către guvern. Cu siguranță putem să revenim oricând la mai multe mecanisme ce țin de dacă anumite instanțe corect au fost reorganizate și aici cred că deja mai mulți judecători și profesioniști pot da răspuns, pentru că avem un sistem de date, vorbim despre statistică, în care poate să ne ofere informații detaliate, în ce măsură unele instanțe corect au fost unite cu altele. Un alt aspect ține și de pe cât rolul Consiliului Superior al Magistraturii, din câte observ dumnealor nu sunt astăzi la eveniment, dar au fost și solicitări din partea judecătorilor prin care au solicitat bani pentru a fi compensate cheltuielile și Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii a refuzat să compenseze cheltuielile de deplasare. Eu cred că asta a fost una dintre puținele oportunități în care Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii putea să aibă un loc activ, iar noi toți știm că bugetul care este propus de către Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii este aprobat de către Parlament. De aceea, premiza că banii sunt insuficienți nu ar fi fost una validă. Sunt foarte multe lucruri de făcut pe optimizarea hărții judecătorești. Important este să vedem, odată ce decizia a fost luată, cum putem să îmbunătățim aceste procese.
Thank you very much, Jon. I see no big contradiction with in our judgments, so to speak. Clear is yes, and this is also what I was writing to the State Chancellery. The political decision has been taken not by CSO, at least not technically or not legally. But de facto, it is so. If as a Ministry of Justice or as a government, you don't have the resources to check the information which you gave, and again, the information you gave are good. I mean, I don't say anything against the study, and it is very good that civil society is contributing to it. I just say it is not sufficient to make one of the biggest moves in reform, as you call it on your own homepage. The Legal Resource Center rightly says is one of the biggest steps in the judicial reform. And if you then basically base your policy on a study done by 3 excellent people, it would not happen in any other country. Again, and you only decisions which you take well informed are decisions which are at the end good. And this is not the civil society which is, and it's not the question of who is guilty here. I want to end also this game to blame and to say, yeah, but look, it's not our, they decided, and so on. This doesn't bring us further. we have, in my opinion, to rethink jointly how we want to see the future of the country, and that means also how do we deal with each other. And this is why I try in my report not to point the finger to everybody. I praise everybody who was involved, because also the good intentions are totally without any doubt. But if we have good intentions, and after 30 years, and I read this in many reports, many things are a total failure, independence of justice is only an empty shell, we come in a few seconds to this, then the question is, do we continue like we did it the last 30 years and blaming each other, or do we try to change something? That is, for me, the top idea of this event, for me, the event of this exercise. And again, I am part of this machinery. I have been part for 20 years. So if I criticize something, I also criticize here myself. It is not to point the finger on anybody. And especially not on the Legal Resource Center, we know that you are very high in expertise. What I so expect from civil society, and this is why I'm also engaged in this NGO, is to involve citizens more. To change from high capacity NGOs to high impact NGOs who really involve the people. That will make it much easier later for the implementation. On this happy note, yeah, Ion.
Dacă îmi permiteți doar o replică, din ce comunicați, cam puneți mai mult presiune asupra ONG-urilor și responsabilitatea ONG-urilor pentru aceste reforme. Noi contribuim, nu doar Centrul de Resurse Juridice, dar și alte ONG-uri pe domeniul lor de expertiză. Statul și are responsabilitatea mult mai mare decât noi în implementarea reformelor, pentru că din ce a spus ați menționat doar presiunea organizațiilor neguvernamentale.
Exactly, this is what I said. Responsible and accountable are those on that side of the table, mostly. But they don't have the money and expertise, because also we donors pump all the money in NGOs. And that becomes then a very difficult game. And what I also always criticize is that first civil society is basically, I stretch it now a little bit, is making the policies, and later they are the watchdog of the policies. I see here a clear conflict of interest, basically. And again, there is a vacuum on the side of those who should do it, and then we jump in. I do the same, and I said, look, let me write the law, then I know it is in line with European standards, hallelujah. But that is not maybe the very sustainable way. And we see it, by the way, always when it comes to the implementation of laws. Because then the civil society is out, and the international experts are out of the implementation. That is then with the other guys. And the other guys say, oh wow, we have a new law, what is it all about? That is a little bit problematic. And with this I come to my second topic of this project, which is judicial self-governance, which is mainly related to Superior Council of Magistrates. I also don't see anybody from them today, but that will not stop us talking about them, right? So I looked in these hundreds of reports, which we all have done, and again I contributed to it, about the self-governance legal framework. I looked into the question, do we need ex officio members, or is it totally poisoned if it is so? And also there I found out that the facts about judicial self-governance are known here in the country, because we have been discussing it for decades. And we have achieved, meanwhile, a pretty good legal framework, I would say. And this is also what mainly all the reports say. The legal framework is good. What is lagging behind a little bit is the implementation of this legal framework. And then the reports are looking, yeah, what are the reasons? We give them perfect legal frameworks and they just don't implement it. And if you look to judicial self-governance, then there's one report which I looked into very deeply, because it's a very recent one. It's from the International Commission of Jurists. You can download it on the webpage of, let me think, it is the Legal Resource Center. So you find it there for download. And already the title says us something. Yeah? They call it only an empty shell when they speak about independence of the judiciary in the country. Well, this is something which I don't share, this finding, to tell you the truth. But again, every international looked into the reason for it. And then they come very fast to the conclusion, you know what, the legal framework is good, but the judges have the wrong mindset. Wow. That is quite a finding. What is the mindset of judges? I was thinking about it and I did some research. So mindset means mentality, attitude towards it. And then I thought, what is the real mindset, the good mindset of a good judge? I didn't find anything really about it. And I was asking myself, okay, how do we measure the mindset of judges? And if we are able to do all this, how do we translate it into selection criteria for judges? Because we want to have the guys with the right mindset. And when I started looking to it, I found it very interesting because it always speaks from the wrong mindset of judges. Like if we others in the society in Moldova, we all would have the right mindset. We all have brilliant mindsets. Only the judges are our problem. I don't see this like this. I think that the judges that we have here in Moldova are a perfect reflection of what we are in the society. Because in the reports they say, yeah, the judges are very believing in hierarchy, they are obedient, they are not used to be independent. Well, this might be true to a certain amount, but this is also true for the lawyers, it is true for the medical staff which I met here, it is true for our teachers. I myself have a daughter who went here the first 8 or 9 years to a school here. And then when we moved briefly to Germany, before we found out Moldova is better and came back, she went to a German school. And she was good in all the things where you have to learn. She was good in mathematics. Well, yeah, basically she says she was good. And she was good in biology and these things. But when it came to things where she had to freely think, to interpret text from Goethe, for example, she didn't even understand what the teacher was asking her. So if we speak about a mindset, which is not the same mindset, for example, like in Germany or like in Spain, then we don't speak only about the mindset of judges. And if we want to change something, we have to see the judiciary as a part of a society. Not only as a part of public power, by the way, but as a part of a society in which we are in which hierarchy, discipline are still very high values. And I think this is one of the major mistakes we do. We say they have the wrong mindset, but what we do then as experts, be it national or international, we say, okay, either we change the mindset of the guys, very difficult, or we bring younger judges, because young means better mindset. It failed, we found it out. In my opinion, we should also think about maybe we have to adjust the legal framework a little bit to the mindset of the people who are living here. And that brings us back to the policy making. If we involve the society broader in shaping the legal framework, which is a good one for us here in Moldova, then it might be helpful. Of course, we don't want to compromise European standards, but maybe it is not enough just to say always, this is the European standard, this is what you have, bad, bad, bad. And then we meet 2 years again, we say, this is the European standard, this is what you have, bad, bad, bad. So I don't found the solution for this. I don't say that I come and tada, from today everything will be easy. What I say is that we cannot afford just to continue like we did it 20 or 30 years ago, if the situation is really so bad, like expressed in many of the reports. And I think there is a certain desperateness also on the side of donors and of us experts. I will give you some examples why I think so. We have been discussed, again, long time about the selection process of members of the Superior Council of Magistrates. We said they have to be elected by their peers and they have to reflect all the layers of of the justice system and so on, and then there should be the majority, or 50%, or at least close to 50%, a little bit unclear. And we did all this. And then we found out the results are not what we expected to be. Yeah? So now we are speaking, if you look into the report of the International Commission of Jurists, we speak about the campaign of the members of the Superior Council of Magistrates, like it would be the election of the next president of the United States. I mean, we try to really look into each and every single word, because we are very desperate, because what we did so far did not the results which we want to do. So again, we are looking into the campaign of it. We want to have now town hall meetings. I mean, it's an administrative body, right? It's not really the core of the policy making, and it's not the place for big visions, in my opinion. And if there is a campaign, then for sure it would be a campaign for judges. They would show themselves in front of judges, not in front of civil society or of citizens, because they are not the electorate. So we go more and more into red tape. We discuss more and more quite strange details here, because we didn't find a solution yet. It doesn't work like it is. And that is, I think, what we have to accept. And we have to jointly rethink our approach, how we make these policies. And that means, again, give more power to national authorities, in my opinion, when it comes to policy making, strengthen their more capacity in doing it, because we need this capacity later when it comes to the implementation. If we haven't learned this, then this is a real drama. It's not a drama where we stay now. But if we don't take any lessons learned into account, then the drama begins. So that are my main findings. So I didn't, in the written report, I also went through the evergreens. I call it the experts' evergreens. This is again the selection, the composition of the Superior Council of Magistrates, which doesn't have such a big influence, I think, like we hope. I wrote something about the campaigning for this body, about the disciplinary proceedings and so on. I can tell you, whenever we invited for our project experts who haven't been informed before very much about what is going on in the Republic of Moldova, they were very impressed by the legal framework. We had one time a guy here from Estonia to look into the selection of judges from the Supreme Court. And he almost collapsed after he read all the detailed procedure of how it is done. And he said, in Estonia, we elect the Chief Justice, and he then says, you come with me, we do it. So we don't have we should not be ashamed of what we have here. We made big efforts, but now it is time really for the ones who have to implement. Yesterday we met with the Ministry of Justice in the ministry, and they rightly said we will focus now on the implementation. Yeah, that is fine, but that means the implementation we also have to focus really to strengthen the capacities within the institutions who are responsible for it. And this is not the EUD, not the Council of Europe, not USAID, not civil society under whichever. Of course we have to help, and we should have a role there. But we are not in the driving seat, in my opinion. We should not be. That is basically my presentation with regard to the self-governance system. Also here I'm ready for your comments or questions. Shoot. I know why I invited you, Jan.
Până când, dacă altcineva nu vrea să vorbească, evident. Bine, ceea ce dumneavoastră ați spus, posibil mi-ar fi fost mult mai ușor dacă ar fi fost un proiect de document pentru a vedea în detalii. Eu regret faptul că s-a trecut cu vederea, sau cel puțin se neglijează frica din sistemul judiciar. Una dintre constatările care a fost făcută de către Comisia Internațională a Juriștilor, urmare a vizitii sale din noiembrie, putem să vedem frica și neîncrederea în Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii prin numărul mic de candidați la concursurile care se fac, Vorbim despre procedurile disciplinare, cum apar foarte rapid, dacă un judecător încearcă să vorbească mai mult. Astea sunt lucruri care nu trebuie să fie trecute cu vederea. Despre alegerea membrilor în Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii, am avut exemple bune, domnule Manchi, când judecătorii au avut discuții prin interior și judecătorii se cunoșteau. Judecătorii la moment nu se cunosc între ei. În ultimii 5 ani, aproximativ 170 de judecători au intrat în sistem și dumneavoastră nu cunosc în detaliu cine sunt alți colegi din alte instanțe care candidează la funcția de membru în Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii. Exemple bune trebuie să fie făcute. Când apar persoane avantajate în concursuri, abia intrate în Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii și candidează pentru alte mandate sau fiind în funcția de membru a Consiliului Superior al Magistraturii și este promovat în funcție în baza niciunui criteriu, asta este un lucru condamnabil. Dumneavoastră ați dat exemplu cu Estonia. Noi nu putem să comparăm sistemul de drept, încrederea în justiție, democrația, respectarea legilor în Estonia cu Republica Moldova. Noi putem să vedem judecători care declară porșcaieni de $500 sau de euro, că tot e acolo, care sunt promovați la Curtea Supremă de Justiție, iar Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii nu vede o problemă. Noi în Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii la film am văzut o problemă când un președinte de instanță a unei curți de apel a participat la o vânătoare ilegală, în urma căreia a decedat o persoană și iarăși a fost promovată. Aceste lucruri se întâmplă. De ce și avem nevoie de criterii? Vorbeam de alt aspect, când discutam de ce nu Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii să-și adopte criteriile sale proprii de numire și promovare în funcție. Și la acel moment, fost viceministrul la acel timp menționat că, evident, că nu toate detaliile trebuie să fie scrise în lege, că și așa avem câteodată o consistență de detalii prea mare în lege. Dar Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii acest lucru nu l-a făcut. Ca după asta să fie adoptată legea. Aveam probleme foarte mari când și fără implementarea hărții judecătorești aveam instanțe în care fie nu aveam niciun judecător, sau era un judecător care examina foarte multe dosare. Am avut o situație în foarte multe instanțe, dacă nu greșesc 6 instanțe, erau problematice de ani de zile. Până când a trebuit, inclusiv noi, dar a fost decizia luată de către Ministerul Justiției, ca să facem un proces similar ca în România, să fie scoasă la concurs funcția de judecător, nu judecător în judecătoria Chișinău sau judecător într-o anumită instanță, iar candidații care vor să devină judecători să fie numiți în funcție, în ordine descrescătoare, punctajul care dumnealor le au. Și prin asta se va asigura. Recent, Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii a anunțat primul astfel de concurs și sperăm foarte mult că toate posturile vacante, inclusiv în instanțele care de mult așteaptă să aibă mai mulți judecători, se vor completa.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments, questions? You? Okay.
In response to Ion, like a question, it's really an open question. I agree with you that there should be criteria. Obviously, there have to be regulations. I'm just wondering if we overestimating the effect that legal provisions can bring at some stage. For example, we have a provision which says assets have to be declared and everything should be clear, and then we learn, oh, in Moldova you can buy a Porsche Cayenne for 500 euros, which is not possible in any other country of the world. So there's a regulation, but still there's a way around it. And I'm wondering if all ever more detailed regulation and ever more precise regulation can actually block that, because there's always a way around it. And we assume if we just put the law in the right way and if we just phrase everything precisely enough, there won't be any possibility to skirt the provisions. And I think by that we might be overestimating the impact of lawmaking. So I agree with you, there should be criteria. I just think it's a it might be the wrong way just to say if the criteria are precise enough, everything will be fine, everybody will always be forced to follow the law, and there won't be any way to dodge provisions.
Știți, când vorbim despre Republica Moldova, noi avem mai multe provocări. Pentru că noi suntem parte la foarte multe documente internaționale. Noi le ratificăm. Noi trebuie să le facem. Indiferent drepturile sociale, economice, în domeniul justiției și altele. Multe țări au venit cu aceste standarde nu prin lege, dar prin conștiința societății, trecând câteva sute de ani. Noi trebuie să compensăm prin alte metode. Noi suntem membru asociat la Uniunea Europeană. Uniunea Europeană impune anumite reguli și criterii. Tocmai de aceea și n-am avut asistența macrofinanciară, inclusiv asistența Uniunii Europene pentru implementarea reformei în sectorul justiției. Dar noi nu putem să neglijăm lucrurile pentru care, pentru noi, să vedem că în sistemul de drept persoane sunt numite și promovate fără niciun merit, pentru că asta are și un alt efect de încredere în justiție. Noi nu putem să facem. Noi vedem cum în ultimul timp ședințe de judecată importante au loc cu ușile închise, importante pentru noi, pentru societate. Posibil pentru Estonia sau alte țări, asemenea lucruri sunt uzuale. Pentru noi, da. Noi suntem un stat mult prea sărac ca să permitem la anumite reforme, pur și simplu, prin decizii secrete, să fie validate anumite lipsă de acțiune ale instituțiilor de stat. Vorbim de frauda bancară și vorbim de alte lucruri care s-au întâmplat. E o provocare, eu sunt de acord. Dar asta sunt căi prin care noi, cetățenii, trebuie să ne asigurăm că judecătorul sau procurorul care este lângă sau în fața noastră va emite o decizie corectă. Noi vedem cum Ilan Șor i s-a permis să participe la alegeri, pe când alte persoane li s-a interzis. Noi vedem cum a fost invalidat printr-o hotărâre judecătorească abstractă mandatul primarului general. Și exemple din asta sunt multe. Justiția selectivă e din ce în ce mai mult, capătă un fenomen. Noi putem să zicem despre exemple bune, dacă vorbim despre Consiliul Superior Administrator, pe care noi le-am avut până în 2015, când procesul decizional era de fapt o comunicare, când noi am participat la foarte multe procese, când am îmbunătățit și am elaborat împreună actele interne al Consiliului Superior al Magistraturii. După aceea noi nu avem nicio comunicare. Eu nu cred că asta la fel este o parte bună. Dumneavoastră a spus că este un conflict de interese dintre a participa la elaborarea legilor și monitorizarea. Noi nu ne permitem luxul să avem în Republica Moldova zeci de ONG-uri specializate pe diferite procese. Și dacă suntem buni în a aduce experți sau cu expertiza noastră să facem proiecte de legi și să le monitorizăm ulterior, eu cred că asta este bine.
Thank you very much. I think there's definitely more to discuss in this topic, but we don't have the time today, so if you allow, I would pass now the floor to Jos Euterhach, who comes with a more positive topic. He comes with a less political topic, and this is also why he has to report better results than me.
I'm always positive, or I'm always an optimist, I must say. Maybe that's the same. I think if just to summarize the discussion that we just had with Carsten's topic, it's just a matter of the discussion who is the owner of any legal reform, and the ownership, who should have the ownership of such a legal reform, or who should have the ownership of any changes into legislation. And there, rightfully, you mentioned also the ownership should be with the Moldovan people, and the ownership of any legal reform should not be with, for example, international experts that are coming. Now we are talking about legal reform, and that was my first topic, and honestly, it's also a very complicated topic, because what is the influence of legal reform on the economic development of Moldova? it takes one separate project, I think, to find out what the exact effects will be of a legal reform on economic development. And it was already rightfully mentioned in the audience also. Legal reform, I think, is just one of the aspects. And we saw that when we were talking about the judicial map also. You can say, okay, you change the judicial map, etc. But if not at the same time you make a lot of other changes, it has no use. So also if we talk about legal reform, we have to take into consideration that it is just one aspect. If we talk about other aspects that are of influence about economic development, we talk about stable macroeconomic conditions, we talk about infrastructure as it was mentioned, the quality of the roads, for example, as you can confirm also if you travel by car from Skopje to Chisinau. We talk about competition, we talk about investments, we talk about working ethics, and we talk about, okay, we talk about the issues like the rule of law. Well, what kind of influence can there be on economic developments? I think it was already mentioned. There needs to be a clear legal framework that is necessary, and Holger rightfully also asked the question, you cannot put everything in the law. You need to have a certain freedom of acting, and I think especially that is important if we talk about economic developments. An investor will not be interested in a country to invest in a country where everything word by word is set in the law. I give you an example from my own profession. It was not in Moldova, but it was in another country where we had a discussion about drafting new legislation with regard to enforcement agents. And then we were discussing what happens if an enforcement agent, for example, is suspended or becomes ill. Now, at what moment an enforcement agent who becomes ill should be replaced, and should there be a formal procedure for replacement of such an enforcement agent? And for an hour we have been discussing whether that should be 30 days, 60 days or 90 days. You think that is reasonable? So you allow an enforcement agent to become ill, you allow him to become seriously ill, but you do not allow him to recover, because he should be recovered within 30, 60 or 90 days. That's what I mean. You cannot put everything in the law. Leave that up to a discretionary power, to the one who has to decide on topics like this. You cannot put that very much into detail in the law. I think that is very much of importance also. You need to have a clear legislative framework also in that respect. I'm just highlighting some points that we have been discussing within this project. I had to look at, well, what kind of aspects can be important. I did not look at any criminal aspects. I did not look, honestly, at corruption issues that might also have its influence on the economic development of the country, because as said already, then it will be a complete project by itself. But how can we say, okay, what is the influence of legal reform? Well, there are some World Bank reports. World Bank reports say that on an average, each business regulatory reform is associated with a 0.15% increase in the growth rate of the GDP. That's a conclusion. So that means also that if we talk about high quality legislation, that will have a positive impact on economic development. What does that mean also? For example, effective access to courts, integrity, competence, independence of court systems. Well, we've seen that. I had to look at, for example, the CEPES. CEPES every 2 years comes with this report about judicial systems in Europe. And maybe that's why Carsten said this is a positive message, because if you compare Moldova then, and the situation of Moldova with other European countries, member states of the Council of Europe, you're not that bad at all. That's positive, I would say. You're not that bad at all. On the contrary, I would say. Sometimes you score above average. Or at least you score average, if you talk about issues like the clearance rate, for example. So that's positive, I would say. I had a look at reports from the World Bank with regard to doing business. And countries, a lot of countries, are very charmed, rightfully or not, are very charmed with the results and their ranking in the doing business. I know countries, I was last week in a country in Thailand, where the government, part of the government policy is really focused on a higher ranking of the doing business. There again, you're not that bad. If you talk about regulatory reform, if you talk about regulations that are necessary to initiate business, you ranked 14 out of 195 countries. And you are above Germany, or you're above Netherlands. So
It cannot be.
now you have to check it, yeah. I know for sure it is. So it's not that bad. Does it mean there should not be any improvement? Of course, there are also some critical remarks to make. I mean, also if you look at the CPES, for example, and the outcomes of CPES, comparing backlogs in cases, etc. Civil cases, no problem. The only remarks, very critical remarks, I would say, in that respect, were made with regard to bankruptcy cases. Bankruptcy cases, for some reason, take much longer than average in comparison with other European countries, but also the recovery rate is much lower than in other countries, European countries, or Asian countries, to compare the two. I also had to look at the draft new strategy for judicial reform. I liked what I saw there, because in the introduction to this reform, they were very critical on the past reform. And they said also, we have, and Carsten was already mentioning it also, we have to focus much more on implementation of the legislation. That is very much of importance. At the same time, if you talk about implementation of legislation, and yeah, that again, that was also mentioned, it's not the implementation as such. It means also it will demand adequate staffing. It will demand adequate resources, or what Carsten was mentioning, it will demand also sufficient capacity that is necessary for such implementation. So honestly, this is the positive approach then, also with regard to doing business. Just a final example, with regard to doing business, a large part refers there also to enforcing contracts, and then I come through that on the second topic. If you talk about enforcing contracts, ranked 69 out of 195 countries. Not that bad. If you go a bit further into detail, how is this divided? Then we see that most of the time that it takes is 585 days enforcing contracts, but the enforcing of contracts then in the doing business report includes also the court proceedings. And there you see that from the 585 days, 420 days are connected with the court proceedings, 60 days are connected with the initiation of the proceedings. So that's in total 480 out of 585 days are connected with the preparation of the enforcement rather than the enforcement itself. Then I come to the second topic, because I also had to look at, did not need to have a look, because we just finalized the project with regard to among probation and penitentiary, also with regard to enforcement. I think enforcement and a well-functioning, efficient, effective enforcement system is one of the most important pre-requirements for any investor or for any foreign investor to come to the country. We noticed, well, we finalized, it was in the same moment as the Atreco project, we did a survey among, I think we had 10 or 15,000 citizens of Moldova. We asked them about the quality of enforcement and about their experiences with enforcement. And the outcomes, honestly, were very interesting. Enforcement is not doing bad at all, despite the fact that there is a lot of negative publicity. But this negative publicity is fed, I think, by exceptions. And an exception is highlighted. Yes, of course. It's much more of interest for media to say, okay, this enforcement agent has misused the rules or has stolen money, rather than coming with positive messages, because positive news is no news for most media. But at the same time, you see also that causes a lot of the public perception, and Karsten was also mentioning that with regard to information and sharing of information with the public, with the general public, and sharing that information also with the legal professionals. And indeed, that is the same issue that is at stake when we talk about enforcement. So their improvement, I think, is necessary in the communication about what is enforcement, what is the role of court proceedings, what do we do in court proceedings. It has to be more open in that respect. Another issue came also from the survey, but honestly, looking at, for example, the enforcement code, honestly, even if it is translated by certified translators, it sometimes is unreadable. It's very complicated. And then we are considered to be legal professionals. But even for us as legal professionals, it's so complicated, written and long sentences, and that was also one of the comments. And there you see also public perception also influences issues like that. We cannot understand what it says in the law. I think that's also very much of importance. Another issue with regard to enforcement is the unclarity with regard to the fees and the present fee structure. I think that, and well, you are all coming from the legal professions, that you have commented yourself, lawyers have been commenting that, judges have been commenting that. It should be eased, the method of calculation of fees, and then you also, I think, will avoid a lot of discussions about the height of the fees. Are they high? Are they too high? They not, I mean, based on the project that we did, in comparison with other countries, they're not too high. They are on the average in comparison with other countries. But the difference is, and then again we talk about communication, the difference is the moment that you have a self-employed enforcement system, it's the one who's causing the pollution that has to pay for the pollution. So the debtor has to pay for the costs. And no longer, as it is in the state enforcement system, that the taxpayer, and each taxpayer has to pay for the expenses. So that's also quite a difference. Other improvements that are necessary, I would say, relate, for example, to the qualification criteria, relate to the suspension, dismissal, but that's very specific issues that we are talking about then. With regard to enforcement. One thing I want to highlight, no, two things I want to highlight. The first thing is the improvement of the quality of legal professions. And I think we did a very good start in that respect in the previous project that we had with the development of professional standards. You see that those professional standards become more and more common also in other legal professions. We see them also with regard to bankruptcy administrators, for example, where they are introduced. These professional standards enable countries to guarantee a certain level of quality of a certain legal professions, like we were hoping also here in Moldova to guarantee a certain level of quality of each enforcement agent, because they have to adjust themselves to certain standards. Standards not developed, I would say that, by international experts, but I think standards developed, and that's important, by the enforcement agents themselves. Here in Moldova, we have had, I don't know how many meetings we have had to discuss the contents of the professional standards. Unfortunately, no continuation is given to these amendments. We have drafted amendments. The amendments are already 1 year, 1.5 years old, and so far it are still draft amendments. Unfortunately, I would say, because that would very much improve also the quality of the profession. Finally, and then I will stop, is that if you talk about legal reform, it is important that we do not consider legal reform as something that is on an island. We have the island of the judiciary, we have the island of enforcement agents, the island of bankruptcy administrators. That's not how it works, because any legislation will have its influence also on any profession. If we talk about changes in the family law, that might have its influence also on how the judge has to decide on cases, or how the enforcement agent has to enforce certain court decisions. I think a good example of that in that respect is also the administrative code that is recently adopted. It's adopted, and now what happens? You know? What happens now with the administrative code?
Yes, postponement of hearings.
You need training, because people have to become aware of it. Enforcement agents, lawyers, judges, they have to become aware of it. And who's going to train them? And there you think there's an excellent example also how you need to integrate also certain developments with regard to legal reform, and that we should avoid that there are too much islands, and that developments, if it is in the field of enforcement or in the field of civil law or civil procedure law, it should be developed more broader than it is done at this moment. But I think my message was a bit more positive than Karsten. Maybe he doesn't like positive messages and that's why he left already. I'm not sure about that. Are there any questions? Or comments? Suggestions? I see only smiling faces now.
Eu mă bucur că am oportunitatea să fac mai multe comentarii, dar m-aș fi bucurat dacă ar fi și alții. Eu doar vreau să ați dat exemple foarte bune dintr-un raport al Băncii Mondiale referitor la durata care a avut loc și numărul de ședințe. Și vreau doar să reiterez faptul că noi suntem cu mult mai puțin sub media europeană când vorbim de durata în care, hai să zicem, viața unui dosar în instanțele de judecată este cu mult mai mic decât în țările chiar din Consiliul Europei. Și eu mă bucur pentru acest lucru și acum cred că este important ca noi să dăm prioritate calității. Ceea ce vedem în Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii, cel puțin asta este percepția mea, este că odată ce sunt colectate datele privind dosarele care sunt examinate în instanțele de judecată, pentru că ei colectează și raportează judecătorii mai mult de 12, 24, 36 de luni, mai mult este o presiune asupra judecătorilor. Tot timpul judecătorii sunt atenționați ca să examineze dosarele în termeni mai restrânși, ceea ce eu personal nu sunt de acord cu o asemenea abordare. M-aș fi așteptat, de exemplu, cel puțin o solicitare către Ministerul Justiției să suplimenteze numărul experților, pentru că multe din aceste dosare țin de anumite expertize pe domenii în care la moment experți nu sunt sau încă nu sunt certificați. Și asta e o problemă nu de când a început implementarea strategiei sectorului reformă justiției din 2011, dar e mult mai de demult. Și noi vedem doar pași reduși. Posibil noi n-am fi avut nevoie de un număr foarte mare de expertize, dar cu siguranță nici multe dosare în instanță de judecat noi nu am fi avut dacă, 1, am fi avut o practică unitară în instanțele judecătorești, ca să asigure orice persoană să nu depună o cerere în eventualitatea în care să apară anumite înțelegeri. Și un alt aspect ține de faptul că asigurarea unei practici unitare ar fi dublată sau cel puțin asigurată dacă am fi avut și un sistem de mediere consolidat. Noi am văzut cum a fost o antireformă a sistemului de mediere când s-a introdus medierea judiciară obligatorie, când judecătorii nu erau pregătiți să medieze, judecătorii judică, ei nu mediază. Și aici apare un alt număr de dosare în instanțele de judecată. Când judecătorul formal intră în procedura de mediere, de fapt nu mediază cazul și dacă vede că e ceva mai complicat, zice că eu nu pot să mediez cazul, emite o încheiere și acel dosar este transmis la alt judecător, la alt coleg. Respectiv, dintr-un dosar, de fapt, sunt două dosare. Statistica este mai mare. Ați menționat despre codul administrativ. Despre codul administrativ este un proces care se discută de mult timp. Eu nu vreau să vorbesc despre oportunitatea acestui document, care se pare că mai mult unii judecători erau interesați în promovarea acestui document decât alte profesii sau Ministerul Justiției, percepția mea personală. Cel mai important este că de menționat că judecătorii sunt într-o situație foarte complicată. Pe lângă faptul că la moment a intrat în vigoare nou cod administrativ, ceea ce a dus la amânarea foarte multe dosare în instanțele de judecată, noi avem un nou cod civil care a introdus foarte multe instituții. Avem peste 35 de infracțiuni noi în codul penal. Avem modificările din codul contravențional. Eu, dacă aș fi judecător, eu cred că mi-aș lua o pauză de un an ca să fac față acestor modificări. Chiar dacă Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii a adoptat o serie de modificări pentru a specializa judecătorii pentru anumite cauze. Dar aceste specializări au avut loc recent și cam concomitent cu intrarea în vigoare a acestor documente. Și vorbim despre coduri, proceduri noi, sistemice, care au un impact foarte mare. Și s-ar putea să avem o tendință negativă dacă vorbim de calitatea hotărârilor judecătorești. Instituții noi să faci față cu aceste dosare complicate, sau poate simple, dar cu instituții noi nepregătite, eu cred că a fost o decizie necalculată, cel puțin, din partea Parlamentului, ca permis ca atâtea documente să intre practic concomitent în vigoare. Mulțumesc.
Yeah, you're confirming what I'm saying already, I think, especially with regard to the recent changes into legislation. I mean, everybody has the same issues and the same questions in that respect. I mean, what's going to happen? How does it relate to my profession? How does it relate to the other legal professions? That's why I'm saying also, do not focus too much on your profession only, but look at it from a much broader perspective and try to benefit from each other also in that respect, because certain issues with regard to changes to the civil code might be interesting for the lawyers, but at the same time it might be also for the benefit of the judges, or it might be for the benefit of enforcement agents or for the mediators. So everybody could benefit from each other there. That is very much of importance already, and then I'll come back to what Karsten was also saying. I think already in the preparation it's important that those different professions are involved the moment that legislation like that is drafted. Because that already gives them also the opportunity to become familiar with those changes, and that not at a certain moment it comes like a smash to them, and then what should we do, and how should we do it, and how should we implement it. With regard to your remark, with regard to the courts, I always think the glass is half full rather than it's half empty. And I think a positive approach is much better than a very negative approach. And of course, always there is room for improvement. And of course, always improvement is also necessary. But what kind of approach do we use in that respect? I prefer the approach of the glass is half full already, and from that point we can continue now. With regard to the specialization of the judges, I rest my case because Marina will go very much into detail on this topic, so I will not steal that from her. Are there any other remarks? No? Sorry.
În contextul celor discutate acum, când suntem în fața unei avalanșe de modificări legislative, modificări de impact, într-adevăr, când avem practic un cod nou civil, practic, și unul absolut nou administrativ, ceea ce îmi pare mie absolut necesar. Din păcate, profesia pe care o reprezint, cea de executor judecător, nu are simțit încă acest lucru, este necesitatea unor instruiri pluriprofesionale, să le zic așa. Deci instruiri comune pentru judecători și executori, pentru cel care pronunță hotărârea și cel care trebuie să o execute. Pentru avocați, executori, judecători, se merge de regulă la noi pe instruiri dedicate unei profesii. Instruirile fac formatori diferiți. Legislația nu este așezată, să zic așa, încă bine. Tratările date într-un curs de instruire diferă de cele date în alt curs de instruire, respectiv cel care pronunță hotărârea vede și înțelege legea într-un fel, cel care o execută o vede și o înțelege în alt fel. Au de suferit în urma acestui lucru justițiabili. Adică ajungem la acte făcute în viziunea celui care verifică legalitatea, adică judecătorul nu incorect, sunt anulări, asta duce la tergiversări, etc., etc., etc. Ceea ce mi-aș dori eu foarte mult ca legislativul, atunci când pune în aplicare practic concomitent sau la o distanță foarte mică norme, coduri cu impact asupra întregului segment al justiției, să se preocupe și de asigurarea unei instruiri și accentul pun pe instruiri integrate cu mai multe profesii concomitent. Și asta ar fi una din sugestiile, rugămințele față de ONG. Mulțumesc!
Thank you. Anybody else? No? So, who can I give before? Marina?
Thank you, yes. So since I'm also a trainer, when the atmosphere is like this, I usually start with some form of exercise in order to wake you up now, because I want to tell you a very successful story. Again. And the only successful story in our report, actually. So it's the NIJ, the National Institute of Justice. I was working on this assessment, I have to share with you, with Vitaly Iordaki, your colleague from Moldova, and he was supporting us not only in my topics, but also in other topics that we were evaluating, assessing in this report. So I'm not joking, actually. So I work in Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, from Eastern Partnership with all academies. And I worked with the NIJ 3 years ago. When I came now, I saw a completely different picture. So it is a success. I work now in Portugal, so I can also compare with EU countries. So in this respect, NIJ has, in the last 3 years, made a quantum leap. We can all debate the impact of their training, hence this is not measurable immediately. So we can only measure the training impact after a certain period of time. And the new generation of judges and prosecutors have just been graduated very recently, I think middle of April. So we will have to come back in a period of 3-4 years to see whether the training conducted, the new revised training conducted by the NIJ is actually reaching the outcomes that we were expecting. When talking about the legislation is harmonized with the European standards and best practices. So, I will not talk about which legislation we were looking at, because this is in detail described in the assessment report. But the standards mainly require that you have an independent training institution, and you have it. That the training is financially supported by the state, you have that. That you provide initial and in-service training, that you have. And that this training is of significant length, according to the professional experience of those candidates, judges and prosecutors. There, minor improvements are possible in terms of legislation, and I will, at the end, number those recommendations. So you have a unique professional and independent institution, that is NIJ. According to the legislation, the mandate, obviously this success story is not interesting for media, they will all went out, and for other colleagues, which are also leaving the floor. But nevertheless, you should promote the success stories such as this. So the NIJ has a really big portfolio, but talking with the NIJ, we realized that they do focus only on the main target groups, which is okay, although the recommendation was that such a big portfolio is difficult to manage and loses the sight or the main goal of such a judicial institution. I will not talk about facilities. They have the facilities, they have the budget, they have a new revised curricula that is according to the European standards, a balance of practical and theoretical side. And later I will tell you what is the standard regarding the internship part only, which needs to be improved. There is a professional start, or educational specialist within. They appoint also a module, managers, training materials, and e-learning tools are available. And is also, recently they have gone through, they have introduced quality management standards, ISO certification in education and quality management. So in this respect, the NIJ is functioning by the book. And what could be improved is in the respect of trainers. The selection of trainers, the process is fine. However, to fix these 20 people, 20 judges, within a certain period of time, it is a bit discouraging in relation to the quality of the training. You need to have more diversified judges and prosecutors as the trainers, and not to fully engage them for this period of 2 years. With respect to the training cycle management process, we discussed with our colleagues there, and the presentation that you see now, it's already outdated since some things have already been done. So training needs assessment, needs improvement, and we discussed in which part in order to make it more comprehensive, which will lead towards tailored trainings for practicing judges and prosecutors. Training design, learning objectives, this is already overcome, since for each module they already have these new templates where they are introducing learning objectives, which at the end lead towards the possibilities to better measure the impact of training. Training methodology, yes, they introduce TOT, so all their trainers go through a TOT training session based on adult training methodology. And finally, training evaluation. This is the only part within NIJ that needs improvement. Actually, we proposed that they introduce Kirkpatrick model of training evaluation, third level, actually not to measure through happy sheets only the perception of participants to training, but to measure the impact of the training, the result of the training, which usually happens after several years of implementing. So if you conduct a training, then you look at the measures, at the outcomes, and in this case it might be a judgment of certain specialized judges. You cluster these judgments and you see whether you have made an impact with that particular training. So this is just one example. With respect to the harmonization of legislation, I mentioned that there is only one thing that could be improved, and that is with respect to introducing initial training for those candidates that come with higher legal experience. Currently, they only pass qualification exam and then they are appointed. According to the Consultative Council of Judges of Europe, opinion number 4, if you want to be completely harmonized with that, you need also to provide initial training for experienced legal professionals. However, these experienced professionals do not need to go through the whole cycle of training. So you need to develop a special curricula that will be tailored according to different experienced professionals. So a very tailored program should be offered also to this, because lawyers, prosecutors, they do need the legal framework. They need to be taught, for example, if becoming a judge, judgecraft skills. So it's something that is necessary, and it's done also in countries where the judges are appointed from lawyers as professionals. Like in UK, they also have induction training. Only in their case, the training is conducted after being appointed. And now shortly I will just mention, with respect to the two major, let's say, training programs that NIJ has, what could be improved with respect to initial training in Moldova. The schooling part, it's too long in comparison to the internship. So the internship part should be at least half of the schooling part or 2/3 of the schooling part. So you can keep the schooling part as it is, but then you need to extend the internship in order that you can surely say that you meet European standards and best practices. Then the second point is that the initial training for experienced legal specialists should be introduced. The proposal made several years ago was to have at least 3 months training curricula for those experienced legal professionals. However, you need on your own to define whether it will be 3 months, how much of this will be the schooling part, and how much it will be induction into the judgecraft work through organizing some work in the courts. And initial training for the court staff. This is not currently implemented, maybe because court staff should be trained after they are employed. And in this respect, it's difficult to create a group which should be part of NIJ portfolio. Regarding in-service training, the recommendation is to make the training needs assessment process more comprehensive, not to ask only judges or institutions about the training needs, but also to look at the strategies, to look at the organization reports, and to look at judgments, the quality of judgments, because they are also telling you which type of training you need to do. And to come back to what the lady bailiff mentioned, maybe you should consider joining groups of or mixed groups of participants, including lawyers, bailiffs, judges, and where necessary also prosecutors. Because currently you mostly have mixed groups of judges and prosecutors, but for specific topics maybe you can include bailiffs too. And the final recommendation is regarding training evaluation. And this should be seen in relation with the work of the Supreme Council of Magistracy, because they are also conducting evaluation of judges, but here we are talking about evaluation of training programs. So NIJ, together with the Supreme Council of Magistrates, should establish a mechanism of evaluating the impact of their training programs. And that is why we propose the model of Kirkpatrick training evaluation model. So that is in short about the success story of NIJ. Our main contributor is gone now. Do you have any comments? I hope from the NIJ at least.
Bună ziua, sunt Ecaterina Popa, șefa direcției Instruire și Cercetare. Avem aici și membrul Consiliului Institut Național al Justiției, domnul Bulat, poate să intervine. Deci suntem onorați și ne-a făcut o mare plăcere să auzim că este o poveste de succes. Și donatorii noștri sau, de fapt, partenerii de bază în care acești 3 ani s-au muncit sunt alături de noi, INDP-ul. Într-adevăr, este un succes pentru noi, s-a muncit foarte mult. Deci aceste certificate de calitate a sistemului de management spun de la sine. Toate obiecțiile pe care dumneavoastră le-ați menționat, deci sunt binevenite, doar că vreau să zic câteva lucruri. Referitor la formarea mixtă, e adevărat, anterior au fost grupe mixte, acum avem doar judecători, procurori. În baza unor acorduri de colaborare avem ofițeri de urmărire penală, avem experți judiciari în funcție, pentru că nu sunt prin buget, deci nu sunt beneficiarii noștri prin lege. Cândva am lucrat cu executorii judecătoriești, acum deja numai pentru că ei sunt privați, dar trebuie să vedem formula. Cât privește formarea inițială, da, cândva au fost formarea inițială a personalului instanțelor, asistenți judiciari și grefieri a fost exclus în modificările noii legi. Nu știu, s-a decis așa că veneau la formarea continuă și se repetau anumite subiecte sau care a fost raționamentul este unul discutabil, dar s-a pus accentul pe calitate și pe acești 2 beneficiari de bază, judecătorii și procurorii. Așa, referitor la alți specialiști din sistemul justiției, ei pot beneficia de instruire, dar contraplată. Există hotărârea guvernului, deci oricine din cei care au și există diferite asociații profesionale care ar putea decide deci, cât minim 3 luni, numărul de participanți, deci există posibilitatea aceasta. Nu am avut vreo ofertă. Am discutat cu doamna Oksana Novikov referitor la executori judecătoriești, dar sunt niște sume mari, deci vedem niște negocieri în funcție de posibilități financiare, dar și avem cadrul legal în care nu ni se permite alt beneficiar, deci nu avem posibilitatea aceasta juridică. Referitor la formatori. E adevărat, noi am discutat și ieri, doar poate că am omis să vă spunem că noi avem judecători și procurori și în afara rețelei, bazinul nostru de formatori, care sunt invitați ocazional, deci pe anumite tematici. Și iată, sunt formatori care au fost autori sau coautori acestor coduri administrativ sau iată civil și ei acum vin foarte des, noi invităm, facem extra plan la solicitările judecătorilor și mulți alți beneficiari, chiar și contraplată, deci avem notarii, avem colaboratorii serviciului fiscal, deci ei sunt în mare căutare, dar noi încercăm să facem față acestor necesități de formare, inclusiv celor judecători și procurori care întâlnesc un șir de impedimente la implementarea acestor coduri. E într-adevăr foarte dificil și sunt de acord că ar fi bine să facem acest mix din profesii, pentru că atunci se găsește cheia și atunci se găsește cele mai bune soluții când sunt puse în fața aceste profesii juridice. Ori asta este important pentru beneficiar și pentru justițiabil de a avea deci o viziune comună asupra unor lucruri, să nu fie această neuniformizare, da, și abordarea lucrurilor. Este foarte important. Referitor la acest echilibru în instruirea inițială, formarea inițială. Noi, deci în timp s-a mărit aceste 6 luni de stagiu, era foarte mic. Și vă spuneam ieri, deci foarte mare accent se pune deci pe partea practică. Doar suntem în simulări, deci foarte multe. Deci partea practică, ei sunt foarte bine pregătiți și deja pregătiți merg în toate aceste instituții în care practic deci vin aproape pregătiți. Deci dacă înainte era foarte teoretizat, da, ca să zic, și ei nu aveau idei de aceste procese de simulări, da? Și ei nu erau în situația de a fi judecător, procuror, avocat, martor și tot aceea. Ei văd pe viu, noi avem deci aceste săli, da, de simulări și asta este un lucru foarte bun pentru ei, într-adevăr. Puteți să asistați la niște simulări. La noi merg acum non-stop de dimineață până la 5:30, deci graficul în ani s-a schimbat la audiențe, ei învață foarte mult. Pot colegii noștri care au fost în incintă să vă spună adevărul că ei sunt foarte încărcați, dar sunt bine pregătiți. Și ei sunt pregătiți de sistemul în care intră, deci cu această normă extra plan. Așa. Referitor la evaluarea care ați spus, Kirkpatrick, deci de ce nu este o nouă provocare pentru institut? Credem că e ceva foarte bun. Întotdeauna s-a discutat, de când țin minte și domnul Carsten Manche, când era și în proiectul Molico și în proiectul care am mai avut și Atreco, deci am discutat despre posibilitatea evaluării. Doar că asta presupune pregătire foarte bună, foarte bune finanțe, ziceam, deci sondaj, este deci lucru în instanțele, zis foarte multe lucruri. Dar noi suntem pregătiți și de ce nu? Ar fi un nou salt și o nouă etapă pentru noi, probabil, ca această evaluare. Noi facem evaluarea satisfacției participantului. În contextul acestui certificat ISO, da, sistemul de management, noi am avut metodologie de evaluare a participantului, deci întotdeauna a fost, doar că de la an la an evaluam și luam deci calitativ cumva faceam câte un asalt așa mai bun în evaluare. Aici putem discuta, să vedem acest instrument nou. Suntem deschiși și chiar vrem să îmbunătățim, să fim printre cei mai buni, dacă nu chiar cei mai buni, pentru că vin colegii noștri cu care avem colaborare și din Armenia și din parteneriatul estic, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Ucraina și noi ne ajută partenerii noștri, Consiliul Europei, care sunt alături, programele, care să avem o colaborare bună și facem schimb de experiență ca să fim cât mai buni. Să avem cele mai înalte standarde și odată ce am ridicat aceste standarde, încercăm cumva să le menținem. Așa că suntem deschiși pentru această evaluare. Obiective am zis deja că avem tot în baza acestui management, selectare formatori, detașări, deci nu sunt formatorii doar care detașați, implicați în instruiri. Ei vin cu plus valoarea lor, dar marea parte a practicienilor sunt judecători și procurori. Deci formatori, da, deci practicienii, da, exact. Sunt,
probabil
da.
A fost o neînțelegere, fiindcă în cadrul institutului preponderent activează ca formatori
practicienii. Nu este situația invers, că ar fi majoritatea detașați din funcțiile care le exercită. Da. Sunt, desigur, aspecte interesante, importante pentru a îmbunătăți capacitățile Institutului. Eu îmi cer scuze, nu m-am prezentat, mă numesc Eduard Bulat, sunt procuror, totodată sunt și membru a Consiliului Institut Național. Un aspect care l-ați menționat despre acea evaluare ulterioară a absolvirii Institutului, aici, în contextul discursului domnului Carsten, aș spune că dintâi trebuie să evaluăm în ce modalitate această evaluare se integrează în sistemul de evaluare a activității judecătorilor și procurorilor, ca să nu fie ca un mecanism de evaluare extra-sistem judiciar. Deci trebuie să ținem cont că acel sistem de evaluare actual este elaborat cu sportul și cu expertiza atât a societății civile cât și a experților care ne-au consultat parcursul reformelor, ca să asigure o independență și să nu fie posibil careva influențe sau deci influența asupra carierii din exterior sau influențe negative asupra carierii judecătorilor și procurorilor. De aceea, ideea e sigur că e bună, trebuie să vedem unde și cum s-a reușit a fi implementat un astfel de sistem, dacă s-a reușit, cum a fost integrat în sistemul de evaluare a judecătorilor și procurorilor și de ce nu. Dar, încă o dată, revin la ideea spusă la începutul activității de astăzi, că ar fi bine să vedem în ce măsură se integrează în sistemul deja creat național. Asta nu împiedică ca Institutul Național să consulte opiniile colegilor de evaluare, care își fac lucru, cred că, destul de bine și cred că, oricum, această colaborare se efectuează permanent. Ce ține de subiectele abordate, cum ar trebui să fie curiculele, este important, desigur, și acel aspect proactiv care ați spus al Institutului, ca să identifice domeniile de intervenție, dar rămâne totuși valabil și solicitările care vin din partea instituțiilor, fiindcă noi fiind beneficiarii, evident că și noi intervenim pe aceeași metode. Analizăm strategiile care sunt, analizăm legislația nou creată, plus evaluăm activitatea procurorilor și vedem care sunt necesitățile. Practic, același lucru noi îl efectuăm care se recomandă Institutului, îl efectuăm și noi și înaintăm acele propuneri pentru instruire. Propunerile, după cum cunoașteți, sunt discutate în cadrul CSP-ului, CSM-ului, deci nu vin de la subiecți apart, dar vin din partea autoadministrării instituțiilor.
Vroiam să adaug că exact același lucru noi îl facem, deci unul din mecanisme ar fi cu instituțiile de autogestionare și sau instituțiile care sunt beneficiarii principali, da? CSM-ul, CSP-ul, Curtea CSJ-ul, Procuratura Generală, Ministerul Justiției, deci conform legii, dar în această metodologie de evaluare a necesităților noi avem un șir de instrumente și focus grupuri, avem și formatorii și deci revizuirea tuturor documentelor de politici, strategiile. Nu există o strategie care să fie în afară. Ori ne trezim ulterior că noi trebuie să facem instruiri extra pentru că suntem vizați într-un plan și de aceea noi, chiar dacă cumva nu suntem consultați la acest document sau ceva, noi ne uităm toate documentele și noi aceasta neapărat includem în necesitățile de instruire și deja facem cu directorii de module, cum am zis așa, o scanare bună și vedem ce mai e important. Și tot timpul am ținut cont de acestea, sunt una din principalele resurse care noi le punem în plan. Dar oricum vă mulțumim foarte mult, ați făcut un efort foarte mare și ne este foarte plăcut acest lucru să auzim. Mulțumim din suflet și suntem deschiși la orice sugestii constructive pentru a îmbunătăți procesul. Întotdeauna este loc de mai bine, așa că mulțumim.
Thank you very much for this discussion. Quite fruitful. I saw that Marina was taking notes very much. Anyway, we have now passed to the next topic already. But before we do it, I want to mention 2 or 3 things. First of all, and I'm very sorry for this, I forgot at the beginning to mention our national experts because they are so modest, and during the work they were not hiding, they were very actively contributing to all our findings, but today they are a little bit hiding. Vitaly Yordaki and Georgetta Anushka, thank you very much for this. I read in the press that they were already thinking who could be all these people involved in the project. So you find them here. If you have any questions to them, please feel free to do so, because they are equal members of our team, absolutely, even if they are more shy than we are. So that was the first thing. The second thing, I thought if I, as a German, take over here the control, we will be very much in time. And this is why I booked a flight for 2 o'clock. So it is one of the stereotypes which failed again here today. We are lagging a little bit behind, so I will soon leave. That doesn't mean that the captain is leaving the sinking ship here. It was just that I was too optimistic with regard to my own discipline when it comes to the timing of this event. And the last remark I make before I pass the floor back to Marina, who will speak then about specialization of judges, is to thank again, first of all, the Institute for the Development of Moldova. I was looking really for a possibility also to work on the NGO side to see how it feels, Jon. So we discussed it with the new president. We will do also a lot of voluntary work, and I give you here my promise whenever you have discussions or whatever, and I'm in the country and you feel that I could add some, let's say, weight to what you are doing, then invite me, and I will come and happily discuss with you, also on smaller occasions. That is the one thing, and of course I'm very happy also that the State Chancellery choose this NGO with our expert team, because we know it is also a big responsibility. And it is a little bit unusual that the State Chancellery is asking with own money internationals to do this. And I think we all are very happy that we have the opportunity to contribute to this exercise. So that were my remarks. Marina, now please go on with the specialization of judges.
Thank you. So this second topic is actually a very difficult one and very much connected with the optimization. What Holger mentioned earlier and then was supported by Jos regarding over-regulating legislation in Moldova, this is not a case in the case of specialization, for example. Giving discretionary rights to certain institutions needs trust, and in case of specialization, this is given to the Supreme Council of Magistracy. So it is the floor is open for flexibility, whether the Constitution gives the possibility for specialization, but at the end, you have a very flexible tools whether to implement or not, which is a good thing. You should not go back now and regulate specialization further in the legislation. However, I wanted to say, here you have the possibility to really react upon real needs on the ground. However, you reacted here very fastly and without detailed assessments. To establish specialization, one needs to go in depth with an analysis in order to tailor it according to the country needs. And according to what I found as information, of course, the biggest support was given by the local NGO that has a survey on specialization, though focusing only on the perception of judges. Not long ago, you had first is 53 first instance courts. Then you also have specialized courts like military and economic. You abolished that. Then in 2015, you created 4 specialized pilot courts for a period of 3 years. This was not working according to the latest information received from the Supreme Council of Magistracy due to lack of number of judges, the legislative framework, especially the civil code procedure, which allows a claimant to file an application to the domicile court, and you only had 4 courts specialized in this case, and of course also due to the fact that you have a random assignment of casements through a software which did not support the necessary algorithm to necessary for specialized judges. And then again, in 2017, another reform which reduced the number of courts up to 15, in total 20, with 4 appellate and 1 Supreme Court. On the level of Supreme Court and on the level of appellate courts, you do have specialization, general specialization in criminal and civil, and it might be sufficient for Moldova for the time being before you finish the judicial map and the current ongoing reform within judicial map, that is the merger of courts. And finally, in 2019, January, as far as I have in my files, the Supreme Council of Magistracy decision, with the decision of the Supreme Council of Magistracy, 4 other courts, or 5, in the court of Chișinău were established, which specialize in different fields. This was not possible for us to assess. Hence, from the time of this decision was enacted, only a short period of time passed. So, in this respect, we could not measure the effects of specialized courts. Although you have a tradition of specialized courts, at least criminal and civil, as I mentioned, as chambers in the higher courts, and also you have economic and military. But you know, you were going very fast and did this decision premature before you finalized the court optimization project. So in my opinion, you should have first finished the optimization process and then rethink whether you need specialization or not. Whether you have to analyze cases, to categorize cases, how many of the cases that you have are really complex cases that require specialization of courts. Or you might opt not only for specialized courts, but for specialized judges or for specialized chambers within one court, which is much more easier, let's say more relaxed step into specialization. So the data that were available, the same like yours, I took from CEPEJ database, and if you look at the data of regarding the case type, these are not giving you sufficient information whether to take a decision for specialization or not. Just the contrary. So, first instance criminal cases, 42,000. You can see that the biggest number are, again, civil cases together with commercial or economic cases. But this is not a sufficient argument that you introduce, for example, commercial cases again. Commercial courts or chambers in courts that are dealing only with these cases. You need to have a more detailed analysis regarding clustering first the cases that come out of the court, the experience of these 4 pilot courts that you had, and now the experience of Chișinău court, in order to see whether the specialization should be further introduced. And if we look at some other analyses that are available, again on the CEPEJ website, of course, not the latest information, but the data from 2014 and 2016, I tried to compare. The clearance rate and disposition time of different type of cases, you can see that the clearance rate did not change at all in all cases. So it was 95% in criminal and 104 in administrative. And it did not change in 2016. I do not know what's the situation in 2018 because this data will be available by the end of the year. So the disposition time, slight improvement you see in administrative cases. So this means that the courts are coping with their backlog, and they are even improving in the administrative case processing of administrative cases. So if you look at the figure, as Jos said, you look just fine. The clearance rate of 95% and the clearance rate of 104%, it's okay. 100 is the ideal, but you are coping just fine. Obviously, the backlog that is there is from other years. So on annual basis, the courts are working efficiently. And what are the, let's say, the preliminary findings regarding the specialization? That you have too many reforms going on. You have the optimization, specialization, the IT technology, the human resources. You want to reduce the number. So this is too much, too many in one period. So you need to prioritize and then rethink whether you need to implement specialization at the same time. Yes, the trend in Europe, it is specialized courts, but this should not, but the reason why in Europe countries are implementing specialized courts is because due to the complexity of cases and also due to the exposure of EU legislation. So countries in EU are experiencing EU regulation, which will also reflect Moldova very soon. But you have time. It's still a very favorable time for you to decide whether you want to specialize your course or not. And the sequence of the reform, I have some doubts regarding the sequence. Maybe, as I mentioned earlier, that some of the reforms should have been implemented earlier. And, of course, lack of profound analysis. For me, it was absolutely difficult to find data that will give enough information for our policymakers to take a decision regarding the specialization. Of course, for you as Moldovan, it's much easier because you have access to different information, but for us as foreigners, it was difficult to find arguments regarding specialization, pros or cons. And I will not talk about the advantages and disadvantages of specialization. You can see, according to the opinion number 13 of the Council of Europe, the list of disadvantages is much longer than advantages, but as I said, this is not a European standard. European standards regarding specialization is that you choose whether you need or not. Only this opinion gives you the pros and cons of implementing specialization, whether within the court or as specialized courts. What I consider as a major risk in Moldova is the independence and the impartiality of the courts. Special courts, if you establish them, are relatively small bodies. They tend to receive the same players repeatedly. So this will lead towards isolation, which might result in a loss of generalist overview of courts and judges, as well as undesirable familiarity, contacts with special interest group. It may even lead to capture by the special interest group for whose service these courts are particularly created. For this reason, special courts are sometimes also viewed as special interest group. That's why the risk I consider very high in case of Moldova. And you need not to rush with the decision of implementing such a specialization. Another major risk is the inefficiency, so which may lead to overspending. When you create a special court, you often put so much pressure, but also all the funds and priorities to the establishment of the courts, which puts in unfavorable situation other courts or courts of general interest, which also might lead to inefficiency, but also to different access to justice. And of course, at the end, different quality of justice provided. That will be all about specialization. I would appreciate comments, especially from the colleague that is from the NGO that also conducted this survey. Yes, please.
Alex Soldatov, Council of Europe. A logistical proposal. You see that people are leaving and we're running really behind schedule. Would it be possible to continue discussing on every issue after the very last part on the prosecution service is presented?
Sure, no problem. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I've actually two parts regarding the harmonization of case law and the prosecution service. I'm going to start with the harmonization of case law. So legal certainty is a requirement of the rule of law. In principle, if two persons go to court with the same set of facts and the same type of evidence, they should receive the same judgment. However, in practice, that's not always the case. That, in principle, does not raise any issues under the European Convention on Human Rights. The European Court of Human Rights has said repeatedly that it's normal in a system where you have trial courts and appeal courts in different regions that different judgments occur. However, there can be violations of the European Convention on Human Rights under certain conditions. There was a recent judgment against Moldova in the case Romanenko, in which the European Court of Human Rights found a violation of the right to fair trial according to Article 6, in which the Supreme Court of Cassation had deviated from a long-standing jurisprudence that extensions of certain loan agreements and giving a collateral, an apartment as a collateral, had to be agreed on in writing. And in the judgment, the Supreme Court of Cassation deviated from that without providing any reasons. And in that case, the court said that's a violation of the European Convention on Human Rights. There may also be issues under other articles of the European Convention on Human Rights, because there's a number of articles which require that there's a legal basis for a certain interference in a right which is granted under the Convention. And the European Court of Human Rights stipulates that this law has to be predictable. So it has to be clear for the persons affected by the law what the scope and the legal effects are. And for example, there was a recent case against Moldova, Litschauer against Moldova, in which a person wanted to run an erotic chat business. He hired girls who were supposed to dance in front of cameras and conduct erotic chats with customers abroad. Before the person did that, he obtained advice from a lawyer, asked whether it was legal. The lawyer confirmed it was legal, and he engaged in that business. He got arrested, spent 2 months in pre-trial detention on the charge of pronexitism, pimping. So the court basically said he was fostering prostitution. The European Court of Human Rights found that there were other judgments in which other Moldovan courts had stated that prostitution requires physical contact between the persons involved, so erotic chats cannot constitute prostitution. And he stated that there's a violation of Article 5 of the Convention because it had not been clear what the exact scope of that judgment, of that provision in Moldova was. So there may be diverging judgments, there may rise issues under the European Convention of Human Rights in certain circumstances. And the thing the European Court of Human Rights looks at is that there has to be an effective mechanism to ensure that case law is settled in the long run. So in the long run, there has to be something in place which ensures that laws are applied consistently. This mechanism depends on two factors. The first factor is the legal framework, and the second factor are certain practical conditions. Regarding the legal framework in Moldova, one of the most important tools to ensure consistency of judgments are advisory opinions by the Supreme Court and explanatory decisions by the Supreme Court. I'm a bit skeptical whether that's the best way to go forward, because there's the risk that the judiciary is sort of steered from the top and that judges receive guidance and they think we need to obey by those rules. But judges are supposed to be independent and not to receive guidance from above. However, I don't have very strong feelings about that. I think what's more important is that there is a legal culture developed in which judges start dealing with judgments rendered by other courts, with the arguments put forward by other courts, and make them part of their own judgment in one or the other way. That does not mean they have to follow what the other courts are saying, but they have to deal with it. For example, in the case Litschauer regarding this pronexitism charge, a judge should say, the appeal court so-and-so has decided physical contact is required for prosecution, and then state, I agree or I disagree with that issue or with that interpretation for the following reasons. And then in the long run, a body of case law can develop regarding certain legal issues, which can ultimately decided upon by the Supreme Court. And then you have the guidance based on that specific case. It's often brought forward, an argument often brought forward is that Moldova is a continental law system in which judgments by other courts are not binding. And of course they're not binding. But in other continental law countries, there's a widespread practice that judges do deal with judgments on decisions by other courts. That refers to Germany, the Netherlands, Austria, Italy, Spain, France, Switzerland, Austria. So a lot of continental law countries do that. In order to enable that, two conditions have to be satisfied. First of all, it must become clear from the judgment what are the legal issues which have been decided. So a judgment has been to be written in a sufficiently clear way so that you can look at the judgment and say, okay, that's the legal issue, and that was the position the court took on that. And there's a recent report published by UNDP Moldova which came to the conclusion that that's frequently not the case. So there are lots of judgments in which judges do not deal with legal issues at hand, and in which they do not clarify what the legal issues are which are decided. And one of the reasons for that appears to be that there's no formal training on legal writing. There's training on legal writing to a certain extent offered by the NIJ, because candidates at the NIJ engage in simulations, so when they're playing the part of judges, they also have to write judgments. I just think that what is offered there is not sufficient to train them on this specific issue of legal writing and legal argumentation, because the number of judgments they have to write is quite limited over time, and they have a lot of things to deal with. So I think it would be useful to introduce a special training module dealing with legal writing, teaching judges how to highlight certain legal issues. The second point is that it must be possible to find the judgments written by other courts. So if other judges highlight legal issues and render decisions regarding a legal question, I, as a legal professional, must be able to find that judgment. And in Moldova, judgments are frequently published, they're put in a database, but that's not enough, because you have to be able to find the judgment on the basis of the legal issue you're looking for. So when you're a judge and you look for something, you don't look, I'm looking for the judgment by the Court of Appeal in Balz, if there's a Court of Appeal, I don't know, with a certain number. But, for example, you think the legal question I have is, does prostitution require a physical contact between the two persons engaged? What have other judges ruled on that? So you must be able to find it on the basis of keywords and of legal issues. And it's quite difficult to create a database which meets this criterion. And I looked at the database with the kind help of Rojetta, and so far the criteria offered to find judgments are not very specific. So in my opinion, that would be an issue to work on, to make sure judgments can be found easily, judgments identify legal issues clearly, and they can be found easily on the basis of that legal issue. And then the body of case law can develop, and the justice system can, or case law can be harmonized in the long run. That was on the issue of harmonization of case law. Shall we just continue?
Impossible.
Yes. So the second thing I was looking at was the prosecution service. By the time the justice sector reform strategy was adopted in 2011, there was a widespread conception that the Prosecutor General's office is politicized, that it's often used as a tool to fight political opponents, and that it's deeply corrupted. So there were quite a few measures in the justice sector reform strategy which were targeting or addressing the Prosecutor General's office. And it was mainly via amendments to the law on the Prosecutor General's office. So a working group was established, the law was amended, and there was really a wide consultation process regarding changes to that law. So the Venice opinion issued, the Venice Commission issued an opinion on the first draft, which was fairly positive already. Then there was a revised draft. The Council of Europe commissioned experts again to look at the revised draft and to provide comments. Then the law was adopted. There were still some changes to the revised draft, and there was a post-adoption review, again commissioned by the Council of Europe. The law has also been dealt with by the Greco Commission in the frame of the fourth evaluation round, and the general assessment was that the law on the Prosecutor General's office, as is now, is largely in line with European standards. There were still suggestions for changes in this area and that area. However, there was an overall positive assessment, and the finding was the law is in general compliant with European standards. Main changes regard the Superior Council of Prosecutors. There was always a criticism that the Superior Council of Prosecutors won't be able to defend independence of prosecutors if it's not very independent itself. So the criticism was the prosecutors working with the council are still embedded in the hierarchy of the prosecution service. The Superior Council of Prosecutors does not have its own budget, so it cannot really function well. They depend on support by administrative staff from the Prosecutor General's office. These things have been amended by the new law on the prosecution service. They do have their own budget now. They do have detached prosecutors working with them. So that was one of the major changes. Other changes, other important changes regarded simplification of the hierarchy within the Prosecutor General's office. There were previously several areas of hierarchy, several layers of hierarchy that has been reduced to one layer of hierarchy. So one prosecutor reporting to his or her supervisor, and that one issuing the instructions, and specialized prosecution offices dealing with anti-corruption and with organized crime have been founded. As I said, all that is largely in line with European standards. However, so far it does not have to seem yielded the desired effects. So there are a number of reports which are very critical of the situation in the country, also in regard to the prosecution office. And the result seems to be that laws have been put in place in line with European standards, but so far the practice is lagging behind, or the perception has not changed that much. The question is what to do about it. And I do think, first of all, I do think that you need to give it some time. So laws change, and you cannot expect the practice to change immediately after that. The Superior Council of Prosecutors started becoming effective according to the new structure very recently. They worked on internal procedures, they worked on rules regarding evaluation of prosecutors on disciplinary proceedings. So in my opinion, it's still too early to say what result it is going to bring. You have to see how that plays out. I think it would be important to focus on implementation right now. As I said, I do think that the effect of changing laws is sometimes overestimated. And if something doesn't go well, there's always an impulse to say, okay, now we change that law, now we can change that law, and now we change this again. And why don't we create a specialized body on this, and why don't we create a specialized body on that? And I think it's time to let the system rest a bit, and to look at implementation and really to follow the process and see whether or not it leads to the results everybody is hoping for. As regards the independence of the Prosecutor General's office, for sure there are certain areas, other areas in the area of criminal justice where still improvements are needed, in particular when it comes to conducting the actual investigation, when it comes to the cooperation between investigators and prosecutors regarding use of computers, e-case system, all those things which are discussed. So I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to the huge part of the justice sector reform which was supposed to deal with the independence of the office, with corruption issues. In that area, my suggestion would be focus on implementation, monitor the process, and see what you get. We have now a little time for discussion. Shall we go with harmonization first, and then you would like to discuss the prosecutor general? Sorry, my God, I always forgot. Shall we start with specialization? Comments on that?
Eu doar să fac o precizare. Dumneavoastră corect ați constatat că noi avem multe specializări, dar vreau doar să menționez că sunt complete sau judecători specializați în domenii mult mai înguste, cum ar fi în dosarele penale cu implicarea minorilor, dosarele de insolvabilitate și lichidare, contencios administrativ, testarea integrității profesionale, traficul de ființe umane și a crimei conexe. Deci specializarea judecătorilor în fond este mult mai mare decât dumneavoastră ați menționat-o la general. Într-adevăr, sunt date puține referitor la de ce este nevoie și unde are loc specializarea, pentru că sunt chiar și instanțe separate unde sunt complete de judecători specializați, se vorba de Orhei și Strășeni, dacă nu greșesc. Restul în alte instanțe nu sunt. Cred că aici este important de știut pe cât de mult noi putem să ne permitem să specializăm judecătorii, ca să nu admitem, de fapt, excluderea judecătorilor, chiar și învățarea în carieră. Avem o hotărâre a Consiliului Superior al Magistraturii care a refuzat un judecător să se ducă la o instruire ce ține de managementul instanței, pentru că dumnealui este judecător de instrucție. Asta este un exemplu. Deci specializarea prea îngustă a judecătorilor ar putea să afecteze negativ chiar și avansarea în carieră. Noi am avut anterior când un judecător de instrucție a fost o perioadă foarte îndelungată în care participa pentru avansarea la Curtea de Apel și nu era promovat, iar, bun, asta nu era scris în hotărârea Consiliului Superior al Magistraturii, dar simplu fapt că judecătorii nu admiteau că un judecător de instrucție poate fi promovat la Curtea de Apel, care examinează alte dosare decât doar cele care sunt pentru judecătorii de instrucție. Și aici cred că este o chestiune despre care, cel puțin în ultimele 3 sau chiar 4 componențe a Consiliului Superior al Magistraturii nu au fost rezolvate. Este vorba de volumul optim de lucru, complexitatea dosarelor, care urmează să fie examinate de către judecători. Și aici, dacă combinăm cu ceea ce a spus Hoger anterior, că dacă sunt hotărâri judecătorie sau în genere cereri de chemare în judecată care nu ridică probleme de drept, care ar fi trebuit să fie finalizate cât la o etapă de prejudiciară până ajunge în instanța de judecată, posibil am fi avut mai puține dosare mult mai complexe, previzibile și o practică unitară, iar referitor la specializarea judecătorilor, deși este îngustă, este bună. Dar ziceam că existența unui număr atât de mare de specializări în baza unor informații, calcule sau analize complexe ar putea doar să ne afecteze anumite percepții referitor la independența judecătorilor. De ce anumiți judecători merită să fie specializați și cum acest proces are loc? Pot să vă dau un exemplu, că judecătorii, nu din voința lor, sunt numiți și exercită atribuțiile judecătorilor de instrucție. Asta este un fapt. Deci este mult mai atractibil examinarea dosarelor de insolvabilitate pentru unii. Și am putea să ne întoarcem la ideile care, de fapt, au stat la baza lichidării instanțelor specializate, care examinau cazele economice și cele militare.
Problema specializării cred că va rămâne și în continuare, fiindcă avem domenii specifice care le-au fost menționate și de domnul Ion, mă refer chiar la traficul de ființe umane, violența în familie, deci sunt domenii care necesită o pregătire suplimentară a judecătorilor și a procurorilor și a polițiștilor. Poate noi nu suntem astăzi gata ca să avem instanțe specializate cum ne se recomandă pe alte domenii. Eu mă refer aici la recomandări în domeniul combaterii traficului, prevenire și combatere, în domeniul combaterii violenței în familie, în domeniul combaterii corupției. Noi nu suntem gata și poate nu-i cazul în Republica Moldova de a implementa astfel de instanțe. Dar o specializare a actorilor, a judecătorilor, a procurorilor, o pregătire suplimentară, oricum cred că rămâne valabil și asta trebuie formulă găsită de autoritățile naționale, după cum au spus și experții. Trebuie să evaluăm în primul rând necesitatea, să ne măsurăm potențialul, capacitățile, să trecem asta prin sistemul nostru care este la un moment funcțional și să vedem care este problema, de ce nu merge sau de ce ar merge bine și să adoptăm soluția necesară. Aceea, cred că azi noi soluția nu o găsim, dar ce e important astăzi s-a abordat, problema e că trebuie să folosim la maximum potențialul care îl avem. Asta e important și trebuie la maxim să evaluăm tot resursele care le avem, să le utilizăm rațional, dar să nu alergăm dintr-o reformă în alta și dintr-o schimbare în alta. O concluzie foarte bună, cred că și în cazul procuraturii, dar este valabil pentru toate sistemele, și pentru judecătorii, și pentru executori, pentru alte sisteme, dar pentru cadrul normativ, legislativ, în general, e necesară o perioadă de stabilitate, de a forma practica. Fiindcă noi, având permanent modificări în legislație, noi nu reușim să formăm acea practică despre care domnul Holger a spus că ar fi bine să fie sistematizată. Exact, foarte bună idee, dar noi trebuie să avem, cum a spus și tot dumnealui, o perioadă de stabilitate ca să încercăm să formăm această practică. Și asta, de fapt, ne aparține nouă tuturor. Și nu cred că e sarcina guvernului sau sarcina autorității judecătorești sau a ONG-urilor, a societății civile aparte. Deci trebuie să mergem toți împreună ca să realizăm acest lucru.
Chiar căutam informații, dacă îmi permiteți. Cauzele de contencios administrativ, comerciale și procedura în ordonanță constituie 6% din toate dosarele care au fost examinate anul trecut de către judecători. Și respectiv, adică restul celelalte, 62%, sunt cauzele civile, vorbim doar de materie non-penală. Da? De fapt, noi vedem că numărul dosarelor de contencios administrativ, ele sunt foarte mici, avem judecători specializați la toate nivelurile de instanță, judecătorii Curții de Apel și Curtea Supremă de Justiție, când de fapt nu este nevoie de o asemenea specializare. Și cum dumneavoastră spuneați anterior, apare problema cum aceste dosare sunt distribuite judecătorilor atât timp cât avem judecători specializați în aceeași instanță pe mai multe specializări, și în ce măsură aceasta asigură calitatea dosarelor, volumul comparativ cu cauzele complexe sau mai puțin complexe și dacă n-ar fi în unele cazuri, de fapt, o marginalizare a anumitor judecători. Nu vreau să zic pedeapsă, dar o marginalizare, pentru că examinarea doar anumitor tipuri de dosare, vă ziceam că poate să afecteze chiar și cariera judecătorilor. Sau, de exemplu, nimeni nu vrea să examineze dosarele care sunt în atribuția judecătorilor de instrucție de mai multe motive. Nu vorbim, adică inclusiv faptul că trebuie să lucreze extra program, atâta timp cât acest extra program niciodată nu este achitat.
Aici cred că rămâne o problemă de management, o problemă generală de management, fiindcă în fiecare serviciu, în fiecare instituție, fie în sectorul privat, fie în sectorul public, oricând sunt munci care cineva vrea să le îndeplinească și munci care cineva preferă să le ocolească, sau posturi. Deci e o problemă de management care trebuie soluționată de către manageri, de către conducători, de găsit acel mecanism fără a leza cariera cuiva, dar de a crea să zicem, anumite etape de gradual, de trecere. Ca să treci pentru o anumită experiență, apoi să treci prin alta. Astea sunt soluții care trebuie găsite pe parcurs, dar încă o dată ce s-a menționat. Avem nevoie de studiu detaliat și impactul a diferitor mecanisme. Aici vorbim, cum ați spus, despre carieră, aici vorbim despre independență, vorbim despre mai multe domenii. Dar cred că e realizat.
So I just wanted to share with you, yes, you have too many narrow specialization. They are quoted in the report. We had no time to go through all of them. And in this related to career development of judges is an issue. And further, it's an issue regarding the independence of the judiciary in respect to removing of judges from one court to another. This should happen only upon the wish of a judge, but not through a decision by the Supreme Council of Magistracy. Of course, we discussed yesterday that in one court they settled very easily. The president of the court discussed with the judges, you know, where they want to specialize, so they solve the problem. But this should not be imposed decision regarding narrow specialization. And there are also many other issues that I also see that are for Moldova are not really applicable for the time being. Maybe you can try with more wider specialization in few courts to see whether it will work. But you know, to go in such a narrow specialization, I think at the end the country will not benefit in terms of efficiency and expertise. These are the only two things that specialization brings: expertise in narrow field and efficiency. And in terms of efficiency, I don't think that this will be possible. So.
think yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but what you were mentioning was also interesting. There's quite a difference between following a specialized training course and the establishment of specialized courts. That's quite different from each other. I mean, it's free, of course, to have a specialized training course so that you know more from a certain area, but that's completely different from the establishment of specialized courts.
That is necessary, actually.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any further remarks on specialization? Any remarks on harmonization?
I think his comment were more in regard to prosecution management.
Okay.
Yes.
Any remarks regarding prosecution?
You already mentioned.
Noi suntem de acord întru totul, fiindcă, într-adevăr, este necesar o perioadă de stabilitate pentru a implementa tot ceea ce s-a creat până acum. Fiindcă avem mecanism nou de numire, de selecție și carieră, avem mecanisme noi de administrare a instituției, avem anumite progrese care nu noi le constatăm, dar sunt constatate și de alți evaluatori din exterior. Avem anumite progrese în crearea și fortificarea acestor instituții și capacități ale instituției. De aceea, la fel cum s-a menționat despre acei absolvenți ai Institutului, nu e suficient ca să evaluăm numai la absolvirea Institutului Național al Justiției, dar ar fi bine ca să le dăm o perioadă de activitate ca să vedem ulterior cum implementează tot aceea. De aceea sunt de acord cu constatarea dumneavoastră că o evaluare ar fi oportună ulterior, după ce va funcționa cele realizate, cele implementate acum, ar funcționa o anumită perioadă de timp.
Anybody else wants to comment something?
Dacă tot suntem în afara timpului și mulți au plecat, dar unii cu siguranță ne urmăresc, dacă vorbim din genere de reformă procuraturii, sunt mai multe aspecte care trebuie să fie clarificate. Este în primul rând în ce măsură reforma procuraturii a distribuit proporțional numărul de procurori la toate nivelurile procuraturii, în ce măsură, după ce au fost instituite procuraturile specializate cu atribuții, în ce măsură trebuie, sau de când trebuie să începem reforma Centrului Național Anticorupție, pentru că aveam procuraturile specializate, Autoritatea Națională de Integritate, dar se pare că cine au rămas cu aceleași atribuții și același număr de personal. Vorbim de Procuratura Anticorupție și un studiu recent care Centrul de Resurse Juridice l-a elaborat, în ce măsură am investit foarte mult în competențele procuraturii și publicul are o așteptare mare de la Procuratura Anticorupție, în ce măsură noi ne permitem ca Procuratura Anticorupție să aibă și alte atribuții decât lupta împotriva corupției mari. Noi am recomandat ca să fie unele competențe reduse, scoase din competența Procuraturii Anticorupție. În ceea ce privește Consiliul Superior a Procurorilor, pentru că s-a menționat anterior despre independență, este mult prea devreme, în prima componență, într-un mandat care nu are o durată lungă de timp, să facem anumite comentarii, dar cu siguranță partea ce ține de transparența în procesul decizional, care este valabil și pentru Consiliul Superior al Magistraturii, și motivarea hotărârilor sale, urmează să fie îmbunătățită.
Eu nu reprezint CSMP-ul acum, dar aspectul de transparență decizională, eu nu știu cum am putea să-l mai fortificăm și mai mult în condițiile în care ședințele sunt publice, accesul este admis, mass media participă la ședințele care sunt organizate. Nu știu, veniți poate cu alte propuneri, cum vedeți că ar fi și mai bine de fortificat această transparență, cum ar fi hotărârile, toate sunt publicate. nu știu dacă sunt alte mecanisme. Dacă sunt, spuneți care, unde funcționează și cum funcționează, noi să încercăm, să analizăm, să vedem cum e posibil de implementat. Ce țin de competența Procuraturii Anticorupție este în proces de examinare, sunt recomandările mai multor experți, mai multor proiecte care au efectuat mai multe evaluări și se examinează. Dar referitor la CNA, nu trebuie să uităm, deci este, în primul rând, nu de competența Procuraturii de a efectua asta la reformă, dar să nu uităm că este un organ cu competență de depistare a infracțiunilor de corupție și noi nu putem să negăm necesitatea existenței lui în continuare. În ce volum, cum, asta trebuie să vină instituția reșind din sarcinile care sunt stabilite și atribuțiile care îi revin, să vadă ce volum mai are nevoie de personal. De competență, tot am spus, e ușor de a reduce competența de undeva, dar noi analizăm de fiecare dată unde transmitem acea competență, fiindcă resursele umane tot sunt limitate, resursele financiare tot sunt limitate. Și dacă noi luăm azi competența de la Procuratura Anticorupție și o aruncăm la procuraturi teritoriale sau o aruncăm în alte procuraturi, noi încărcăm acolo volumul de lucru, noi trebuie să fim gata că acolo avem resursele necesare pentru a prelua astfel de competență. Nu e vorba de, eu știu, dorința de a menține această competență exclusiv în Procuratura Anticorupție, dar e vorba de a trece managerial corect această competență dintr-o parte în alta, fiindcă are alte consecințe decât descărcarea Procuraturii Anticorupție.
Anybody else? Some final comments to be given?
Thanks for coming.
So, thank you all very much. Thank you also for the interpretation and, well, thank you for staying that long.
Find some coffee.
And maybe we should share with you that the final document will be made available very soon, and your inputs from today's will be incorporated. That's why it was not shared today.
Thank you.
Avem un termen aproximativ. Avem un termen aproximativ când va fi acest raport.
I think
Luna, cel puțin.
from our side we'll finish in 1 week time, and from translation part I don't know how much it will take. So I presume that it will take 1 or 2 weeks.
Rather
Because it's a huge volume, so we all have 40 to 50 pages, so it will be like 150, 120 pages, or 60, 160 pages. It takes time to be translated. Thank you.